Good afternoon, Abbotsford residents. I'm Mr. Pelican. I'm running for the mayor of Abbotsford to bring the RCMP in, but to go after the city books of what elected officials were doing to enrichinate themselves, lobbying provincial and federal money through the city's position and its chair to enrichinate themselves. But also what the Abbotsford APD, Mike Sir, did, covering up Henry's attempted murder on my life to shut my mouth. This mob was running this town, as Pierre Poliette said, the Mennonites mob, the M&Ms. You know, we're only a few days out from the BC Conservative leadership. It doesn't matter who you vote for. We know we can't vote for three, the Liberals, Peter Millibard, Caroline Elliott, and Ian Black. And we know your vote has to go to somebody that can take the fight to David Eby, help our farmers, discipline the MLAs, and get these ties, this malicious coalition that they could collaborate with mayors and stuff to get themselves reelected. There's only one man. If you're a 1BC supporter, you will respect what Dallas Brody told you, and you'll get Yuri Fulmer in. Yuri Fulmer, I have not sat down with him, but he's a premier for the people. If you watch him when he comes out to do his rallies, he takes his time to listen to the people's complaints and is shocked. That is the type of man that runs a successful business, knowing where there's problems needs to be fixed. This man has the ears of his constituents, and he's going to tune them MLAs up. We need to elect Yuri Fulmer to be the BC Conservative leader. Today I want to show you a podcast, and I want to show you, this is by some of the city councillor, or some of the city workers, I should say, in Abbotsford City, and Dave Sidhu's friends. And I want you just to quickly listen to this, and then I'll elaborate on it.
Are we getting there? What's their problem? Right? And I want to be held accountable. I'm bringing out full council.
So that is Dave Sidhu when he was rallying to run for city council with Abbotsford First, and he was running Ross Siemens as a slate. Except for a few of them that ran independents, that were not a coalition in a partnership, that if Dave Sidhu stands to gain, they all stand to gain. Dave Sidhu was the most vital of putting Ross Siemens and loading Ross Siemens to the mayor seat. His dad was the chancellor of UFB that said his shithole son blocked me at UFB and got UFB to carry them threats, and then used the Capriccio newspaper to block me. This is Tracy Road. Corky Neufeld took Amric Moran, a man that lives in this riding, to the ledge to emphasize at the ledge. He had no qualifications to be there. He wasn't offering David Eby legal advice or anything. He took him there to leverage him in over the other city councils that are running in the city unfairly, to load Amric Moran. Amric Moran knows that that's wrong. Rather than Corky Neufeld take Joe from Short Road into the ledge and argue that why he was introducing him, because Joe could argue that my berries, I can't build a bigger cannery in Abbotsford on Short Road, David Eby, because your Minister of Ag in the city of Abbotsford won't allow me to build cold storage, and they've been hampering me, and you're saying take alcohol off from the United States off of BC shelves, but we're selling our blueberries, and you're running around saying buy Canadian, grow BC, grow this and that. Corky Neufeld didn't do that. He disgraced the BC Conservatives. He used the ledge for advertising, and he was there single-handedly to put Amric Moran in, which now I will take the liberty with Abbotsford people that are running to write major complaints into BC election, and Amric Moran's got to be disqualified. This is a man that sits on a non-profit that made profit. This is a man that sat on the Abbotsford Police Board. He didn't take Abbotsford people from the Mackenzie Bog, Corky Neufeld didn't do, and say, Mr. Speaker, we're welcoming them families and blueberry peoples from the Mackenzie Bog that got deadly sick, and the ag minister won't shut it down. He didn't do that. He was single-handedly there to give Amric Moran the advertising over all the other candidates. What are I doing here on Tracy Road? This is Dave Sidhu's property that he got a lift. There's many people in Abbotsford that tried to rezone their ag land to bring bottling and juice bottling companies that were hampered. Dave Sidhu got that lift from Ross Siemens, which was his partner with Abbotsford First, and then used the city to leverage to the province through Pamela Alexis to get the grants for Vitalis and lifted it to Vitalis. The city staff told me, Mr. Pelican, your videos the other day on Tracy Road about Dave Sidhu's property, and phoned into Vitalis and the Vanderpoels and said, commence the digging immediately. Start the development immediately. When we start the development immediately, David Eby won't take the money back off the table for this. So they came out here with excavators, and you can see them. They're moving soil quickly. They're commencing it. And they're showing that we're going ahead with this project quickly. When the project's up, then nobody will argue, well, I'll just let the project go. It's a dirty way of doing business. This is what Henry did at the bus terminals. He didn't go back to Trudeau when Trudeau took over and became the Liberal Prime Minister and beat the BC Conservative Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, and say there was damage on a lift of a piece of property. He wanted to keep the money coming in because Trudeau would have pulled it off the table knowing there was negligence. Dave Sidhu made sure that Andy Sidhu's property was sold through Ross Siemens and Abbotsford First for a lift, a step shovel lift off of his piece of property. Then used their ties to Pam to lobby to David Eby and the ag to get this sold to Vitalis, to the Vanderpoels. Then used the position of Nicole Reid, the city council that comes in, to lift this land. And now they're commencing digging. Let me tell the Vanderpoels, you better listen very closely. I'm going to Abbotsford voters because I'm going to take the chunk out of Ross Siemens, and I'm like unbelievable. I become mayor. I will take your building, and I will take every bit that you put in, and it will go back to BC taxpayers, and it will be in front of my courts for insider trading, lifts to land, and violating Abbotsford taxpayers. I would shut the bloody project down. David Eby's going to be hammered when the Conservatives see it. But who should be standing here is that little wimp, Corky Neufeld, that disgraced the BC Conservatives, tried to lift Amric Moran into the city council position over everybody else. Went around with Colin Watts for pictures to get him leveraged at the police thing, using him over everybody else. It's unacceptable. This is why Bruce Banman, when he ran for the BC Liberals, said a democratic process and a democracy is what we need. City Council phoned me this morning and said, Mr. Pelican, you need to stop wherever you are, and you need to go to Tracy Road, and you need to get a podcast out very quickly. The city's been told from councillors and the mayor to rush permits very quickly, and get these things up. Don't do any hampering to stop it because of the videos that went out. We need to commit it because Dave Sidhu's in trouble. So Dave Sidhu asked, this is Dave Sidhu's friends that brought me that was a backyard party Dave Sidhu had when he was running for council, to be held accountable. To be held accountable. Not accountable to me and you as the voters, but be held accountable. But now Dave Sidhu don't want to be held accountable because he stood to gain money with his dad. Dave Sidhu don't want to be held accountable because it got Ross Siemens in trouble, his partner on the team, and the city councils that were a partner into Abbotsford First for insider trading. Dave Sidhu don't want to be held accountable now because it involves the Supreme Court for insider trading, racketeering, using special position, warding this. And Dave Sidhu don't want to be held accountable. Dave Sidhu has wrecked his life, and his dad, Andy Sidhu, said, my shithole son, Mr. Pelican, my shithole son did that at UFV to block you, to load his very best friend, which is his partner, into Abbotsford First, Ross Siemens. But Andy Sidhu is the man that stood to gain. Dave Sidhu rushed and helped with City Council Andy Sadoo's new house when he moved from here over to Farmer Road. This was preferential treatment and beyond preferential treatment. But here's what they did. The city staff was telling me today when they phoned me that they're using the Vanderpoels, what got corporate welfare. The Vanderpoels did. Vitalis, corporate welfare. And it didn't need this handout. They're using it because it's a big company. It'll scare people like me. And they got big lawyers. I wonder if Amric Moran's their lawyer. I wonder, Dave Sadoo, if Mark Warkentine, that bought Ed Fast into Ed Fast's old practice, and he's a lawyer, did the land deal here. I wonder, Dave Sadoo, you want to be held accountable. Abbotsford South Asians are asking me to do this, and some that work in the city. They want to see the sale of the land, they want to see the lift of the land, and they want you to foreclose when you sat on City Council with Ross Siemens, Dave Sadoo, Kelly Shahal, Mark Warkentine, which is an Abbotsford First. So let's talk about accountability, Dave Sadoo. You want to be held accountable. Did you not think when Mark Warkentine joined Abbotsford First, which was your company of Abbotsford First, it's a company, and the company's responsible for everybody that's in it. That's why Les Barkman never joined it. When Mark Warkentine went to England, did you not think it was responsible that Abbotsford First stood up Mark Warkentine's partner and did his speech? Mark Warkentine knew that. Did you not think it was responsible that when Mark Warkentine was in England, Abbotsford First was hanging their signs all through Abbotsford illegally and holding them up in rallies and putting them on Ronfunks of Diverse? You wanted to be held accountable? Mr. Pelican is after the mayor's seat, so Ross Siemens, Dave Sadoo, Vitalis, and these people can be held accountable by our justice system, our Supreme Court. I want to make sure Abbotsford South Asians understand this. You need to get behind Yuri Fulmer and vote him in, because he'll take this back. He'll take it back immediately because it's illegal for BC taxpayers. It was corporate welfare, and it's legal and it's a criminal act. This is what began all the threats. And I got a police chief that's running around promoting Amric Moran that embarrassed the whole of BC, doing what he was doing at the Ledge, emphasizing that Amric Moran needs to be loaded to the City Council. So the speech from Corky should have been, Mr. Speaker, the NDP, this is the newest guy we picked for the Abbotsford establishment to get him in on City Council, Amric Moran, and that's what they were emphasizing over everybody else. He's a guy that we can go through when we're in trouble, and he'll help pass decisions and win decisions on the council. That needed to stop, in my opinion. This is what we need. We need Henry's words, transparency and accountability. So today the city staff phoned me and said, you want to go out there, Mr. Pelican? You want to see what they've been told to rush it. You want to see how fast the permits are going through with Rob Isaac, engineer, Peter Sparanazing, everybody, because you podcasted it. This is what needs to go before our Supreme Court. So I'm going to make this promise to Abbotsford, to the South Asians that stood by me, to everybody that's been involved. I told you I'm going to take a chunk out of Ross Siemens like he's never been. To the people in the Abbotsford First said I grabbed Sandy Blue up the dress. You wanted to play politics behind the scenes and dirty, filthy politics that wreck people's lives and steal. I'm going to play it on the world stage in front of everybody. I'm going to make sure assholes, listen to me, assholes like Mark Sir, that figured he was the police chief to cover Henry's hit and run, and then use his police force to target me with the task force to block me in that election ordered by Henry. And Ed and Mike knew that. Cut a deal, Mike DeYoung said. Everybody asked me why you go so hard on Peter Mellibard, Caroline Elliott, and Ian Black. He's a Liberal. And Mike DeYoung said, cut a deal. Henry owns F in Abbotsford. Mike DeYoung endorsed this guy, Dave Sadoo, for the BC United. He threw a party illegally on Bill Road for Dave Sadoo illegally. I want to make this clear to Abbotsford. As your mayor, I'm not happy if Ross Siemens is out. I'm not happy if Dave Sadoo retires like Brenda Falcon out. I'm going to go after them, and I'm going to put them before the Supreme Court. They're not going to load their pockets off the back of being a servant of the people, getting a nice job, and only looking after themselves to enrichinate themselves, lobby their lands. So the South Asians will tell you, and I've drove around with them, they've been trying for 10 to 15 years to get land zoned, and they couldn't get it through. And these guys went and zoned it only to them, only to them, only to them. It doesn't call for Dave Sidhu's resignation and to step down in Ross Siemens. It calls for criminal investigations by the best, and only the best, not appointed by David Eby, the RCMP. And it calls for them to lose their assets. And make no mistake, this bloody Vitalis was involved with it. And Vitalis was doing it, the Vanderpoels were doing it, and it needed to stop. It needed to stop off of Abbotsford's back because it landed up in massive threats, covering up organized crime, ripping Abbotsford city councils in Henry's house, collaborating and everything. Dave Sidhu, I want to make it clear, there was only one real man in Abbotsford, and that was Jake Siemens when he asked me in a lunch, and he came and saw me, not to podcast out in front of his daughter-in-law in his grandchildren's house, because he knew this day of ripping Ross Siemens apart and tearing Ross Siemens apart, I'm going to do that. With Darren Brown open, the stealing, the threats, the vicious, sick stuff, I do not think that David Eby's Dr. Bonnie Henry could come in here and mentally help these sick individuals that were doing that. I want to end the podcast by telling you this, ladies and gentlemen. A lot of people ask me, what's your experience? Let me give you my experience. I'm well certified in the Red Seal of being the biggest asshole for Abbotsford residents and victims. I'm well certified in that. But my certification is a little bit higher than Brad Viss's. Okay? Brad Viss was a two-bit secretary, and he worked for Ed Fast. And somehow, magically, Brad Viss is your MP. Qualifications mean nothing. And that is why I went after Amric Moran. This man's a lawyer. So Amric Moran should have took his best friend of 40 years, Joe, into the ledge. And Joe should have stood up and hammered David Eby that he's got to freeze them berries in California and ship them because of the block. And the ag could have overrode everything. And your ag's flying out to Ottawa. Kelly Green is flying out there for money for the infrastructure. It was how much they were loading through these dirty mares. Abbotsford residents, I've waited for a long time with this, thanks to the RCMP. I've been in the cage and pacing back and forth like the lion, waiting to feed. This day is coming for this mayor election. And thanks to Abbotsford, many people in the Abbotsford community here that helped, I want to say we still owe, and we must say, a tremendous thanks to the best law enforcement that ever served this country, the RCMP. We would have never had this. We would have never put this together. The attacks on my life and everything. The threats I showed you 2 weeks ago of the Abbotsford police up at Ledgeview and everything else on me constantly was the block media. Dave Sidhu wants to be held accountable. Under me, he's going before the Supreme Court, him and Andy Sidhu, and so is Ross Siemens, and they're going to lose their assets. So Dave, I suggest that you take it up on your own accord now, and you go start lobbying all the South Asians that they need now, really for your better welfare, for Abbotsford First, Kelly Shaw's better welfare, for Mark Warkentine's better welfare now, and Ross Siemens, that we really need to get behind Ross Siemens with loads of monies, dump trucks of money and votes, because now Mr. Pelican is about the South Asians, and that's going to be clear. I'm going to make sure that there's a fair, level playing ground for my farmers, my South Asians, building permits and everything. I want to ask this before I close. Peter Sparanese, the city manager, how much were you involved in this? Because you should have wrote a document to the Attorney General outlining that the councils that were involved in Abbotsford First with the mayor and Dave Sidhu all stand to be rewarded, and they lifted this. How much were you involved with this, Peter Sparanese? I'm live, Abbotsford, British Columbia, Abbotsford, BC.